So, thank you everyone for coming. It means a lot. As always, lots of new faces, and it's a pleasure to see you all here. I hope you attend more in the future. Tonight we'll be debating whether it's best to date within the fandom. Is it best? I.e., is it the best choice available to you? This is going to be debated on by 4 speakers, who tonight are Smiley the Mayor, Moloko, Caden, and who's the one I'm missing? Elt. So our first speaker tonight is going to be Moloko, arguing that it is best to date within the fandom. Whenever you're ready, take the floor.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming to this debate. You can call me Jinx or Moloko. Tonight we're debating whether or not it's best to date within the furry fandom. I feel that although it isn't guaranteed to be a successful method for everyone due to varying individual preferences, I believe it's better in most situations because it brings people together for one common interest, is easier due to general expectations, and there's simply no harm in this method. So first off, let's review how relationships start most effectively. People usually get along because they have something they can set aside their differences for, or because they just have something in common. People looking to date do the same thing. And as for us furries, we should feel free to date fellow furries as we please. Having a common interest is what allows us to have a conversation in which we can feel more comfortable with each other if we have something we can relate to. Speaking of comfort, this brings us to the easiness of finding a mate because you already have an idea of what to discuss firsthand. When you want to get along with someone, you generally need something to discuss, and when you know what you want to talk about, it makes it easier to approach people. As furries, we expect each other to be tolerant of others who take pride in anthropomorphic subjects expressed through things like art and role-playing. You expect to talk to each other about furries, in which it brings you together and could even lead to a special relationship as intended. And lastly, it should be obvious that there's nothing wrong in trying to date someone within a fandom, as people could assume that it's risky due to generalizations, even though it's not. People get hurt in relationships because of what's happened between the individuals, not because of the communities they were in. There's no harm in dating someone in your community. It just depends on the particular person you went with. Say you just broken up with someone because they hurt you. In retrospect, that was because the individual chose to perform that action, not because the person was in that one fandom. You can always find another person in the same fandom who will be different than the previous person you dated. So in conclusion, dating within the furry fandom is more effective than not because it makes it easier for people to get along due to common interests and expectations, and there should be absolutely no harm in doing so. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you very much for that, Moloko. Right, we have some questions for you. First question for you tonight comes from Simba.
Hi, Moloko. Thank you for talking. So common interests are wonderful, but a lot of furries have quite severe social difficulties. Do you not feel that perhaps to help gain social skills, it might be beneficial to a person to date outside of the fandom?
I think that it depends on who they're talking to outside the fandom. It's definitely not a bad thing, like, not to engage within the furry fandom for that. You can talk to people outside of it, even if you have social issues and stuff that kind of limit you from talking to people within the furry fandom.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your speech as well. That was very good.
You're welcome, thank you.
Do we have any more questions for Moloko? It would seem that your speech was so good that people have no holes to pick in it. So anyway, I'll ask one before we move on. This comes at it from another point of view, in that, you say there's no harm in dating someone within your own community, but the question is arguing whether it is only the best choice. Do you think, in fact, that it's very hard to put a value on dating someone within any particular community? Because when we're judging who we want to have a relationship with, we should judge them as individuals. So how can you put a value on which community it's best to be in a relationship with someone with?
Well, it's not particularly best if you're just picking a random community or anything. It depends on what the individual is interested in. And if you're a furry and if you're in the furry fandom and you're aiming to look for someone else who happens to be a furry, then that's your best option, unless you're looking for someone who is at least tolerable of furries. Now, if you're not a furry, then you don't have to be dating people within the furry fandom.
Right. Thank you very much.